It is a big day for me today, and I wanted to share with you from my heart because I have some thoughts. I just received my last payment from selling my previous startup all the way back in 2017. Yes, you heard that correctly. My earnout has lasted 8 years, and that is a ridiculous number. But it's important to talk about this because I want to just give you the reality of how I feel and what I went through in selling a startup, and whether or not you should be thinking about an exit or running your startup for the purpose of an exit. Welcome to Founder Fridays. This is my ongoing series where I just talk to my audience, the ones that are connected who know of me. If you want to figure out who I am, just go through my description or watch some of my other videos. This, like I said, is from the heart. A lot of founders regret selling their startups, and I've exited from 2 startups. I've had 5 failures, my regular story that I tell, but 2 of them were exits. And my first exit, I did not regret at all. And unfortunately, I thought every experience was going to be like that. I ended up selling, and it was more like an acqui-hire, and I got a really nice, swanky job, and it was a really great learning experience because I was young at the time. I was barely 21 years old. The startup that I'm talking about that sold 8 years ago, well, I was 41 years old when I sold it. I've gotten feedback over the years that I never should have sold that startup, that in fact, it was probably the dumbest business decision that I made. It was an HR tech SaaS company that I actually interviewed down at Y Combinator with, gotten a lot of great feedback, and we started getting product market fit, and it was growing really fast. The problem was I was pretty burnt out, and my identity was really tied to the startup, and my mental health was starting to suffer. Plus, my wife didn't want me to move down to San Francisco for 3 months. But me and my technical co founder, we made a go of it. And it was really nice to get that validation, especially from an organization like Y Combinator. But my number one customer got wind that I was trying to go to Y Combinator and I was raising money. And they made an offer and they said, "How about we buy you?" And we started spending the next 2 years negotiating. And this was after we started getting a product market fit based on some really amazing advice that we got from Y Combinator. Thank you, Kevin Hale. I will always remember the advice that you gave me and all the encouragement that all the members of Y Combinator gave me during my interview. But back then, I was doing the startup strictly for an exit. I wanted that glorious unicorn exit to get that FU money. And so the prospect of getting an exit right away without having to go to Y Combinator, well, that was really attractive to me, especially considering the state of mental health that I was in. And so 2 years later, it was a very difficult process selling, but we finally came to an agreement. And that started to set off a chain reaction of events that I would later on regret. Now, let me just say this. I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful. I consider myself blessed that I could even experience an exit, let alone 2 exits. It's made me who I am today. I'm a better advisor. I'm a better founder. I love investing. I love working with founders. I love working with investors because I've had that experience. And hindsight is always 2020. If you use those lessons to do something better today, well, then it doesn't matter what you regret. There's always going to be some type of redemption. And I have no complaints about the money. Even though I talk about having FU money, it would be really nice. It really is the idea of that. It's the milestone. It's the achievement of having exit or building a unicorn company and having a glorious public exit, which I've tried many times to absolute failure. That was what I was looking for. It was part of my identity. It was a psychological thing, not a financial thing. I don't regret the money at all, nor do I regret the person that I've become today. What I do regret is how I made the decision and how I went about it. The other day, I was watching a founder on YouTube talk about the fact that he sold his company and he regretted it. And if he just would have stepped back and sent everybody on vacation and went on vacation himself and cleared his mind, the company would have been way better off. He would have made more money than his exit. It was a pretty good exit, but as he stepped back and he thought about it, he regretted how he went about the exit. If he just would have hung on for a few more years, then it would have been even better of a situation for him. And as I reflect back, I think that's the same thing with me. Had I just hung on and not been so focused on the exit, I think there would have been a better outcome, and I still would have ended up where I am today, just a little further ahead, a little more comfortable, a little more fulfilled, a lot of those psychological check marks taken off my list. Because if you leave your mind psychologically without closure, there'll always be these what ifs. You'll start to think about and reflect and think to yourself, well, if I still own that startup with the tools that I have now, especially with AI and all that's going on, what would I have done differently and would I have had a better outcome for me, my family, everybody around me, employees, my co-founder, you name it. Which is why the crux of the entire issue is that when a founder, like I did, works to build a startup just for that exit, then I don't think you can really see the forest through the trees. I think you lose the healthy perspective in terms of building a sustainable startup that makes money. I probably could have kept the company, iterated it with all the different changes, and made a very comfortable, sustainable startup that still be in my portfolio of ventures today. I could have found somebody else to run it. I could have passed it off to employees. I could have parlayed that into other ventures by tacking things on, maybe developed a bit of a private equity portfolio or a family office. But I'm never going to know, and it's so important for me to let it go, which I'm working through right now, and that's part of this process sharing with all of you in the YouTube community on my channel. I can tell you this, that exit over 8 years, I never would have signed up for it if I would have known that it would have dragged on for that long. There were a lot of broken promises, a lot of underperformance, renegotiations, a lot of heartache, gnashing of teeth, just all the stress that comes with trying to maximize an asset because now you've got nowhere else to go. It's either squeeze all the value out of that exit or go do something else, leave that money on the table. And there was always this fear in me that I was going to leave the money on the table when in hindsight, I should have walked a long time ago. And I really appreciate those founders out there who share with me, yes, Ed, I had a 9-figure exit, but I exited with less money because I didn't want to work for them for the next 6 months or 2 years. Imagine working for 8 years and staring at your former startup. This is like your baby, and it's no longer your baby, and you're watching other management decisions start to get made, and you're no longer in control of it. Well, that can cause a little bit of friction. There's been some stress. But with the finality of those checks, I can get through the 5 stages of the grieving process, get right to the end. And I talk about this on the channel a lot. The 5 stages of grief are first denial, then anger, then bargaining, then depression, and then finally acceptance. And I think I've been stuck in depression for a very long time, and it's been weighing me down. It's been like a cloud over me, and now it's lifting, and I can accept it, and I'm totally moving on. After I wrap up a few things, there's going to be nothing in my life that's going to remind me of that and allow those regrets to sneak up. One of my favorite movies is Men in Black Part 3. And there's a particular scene when Tommy Lee Jones' character, the older agent, asks Will Smith, do you know what the most powerful force in the universe is? And Will Smith says in a cheeky manner, sugar. And no, Tommy Lee Jones says it's regret. And I used to go to this type of gathering inside corporations. I knew a friend who's running these meetings inside corporations. It was called Action Today. And it was specifically about what are all the things that you regret and what you're going to regret, and what do you want to do in terms of taking action today. And regret, I think, is a very, very powerful emotion. And you don't want to fall into that as a startup founder. But a lot of times we regret having a specific value system that leads us astray. It's kind of like climbing the corporate ladder. You climb all the way to the top only to find that it's leaning against the wrong wall. And I think that's what we end up falling into as a potential trap when we're building startups to get rich or go and get an exit. Instead, how about building a startup that's sustainable and just makes money and can last a very long time? I wish someone would have sat me down and explained this to me like a mentor or a coach way before I got into startups. And I wouldn't have understood it fully, but at least those seeds would have been planted in my head so that when they come up, I would have reflected. Another clip that I saw was Matt Damon talking about winning his Oscar for Good Will Hunting. And he was a young dude. I think he was like in his 20s still. And he was sharing how he went at night and he sat with his Oscar and his girlfriend went to bed and he had this moment of revelation where he was still like amped up, but he realized that he was so glad to have the experience of winning the Oscar now, only to realize it doesn't really mean much, rather be in his 80s and having chased that Oscar all his life to end up going, yeah, that wasn't as good as I thought it would be. And I think a lot of founders, if you look at the statistics of depression or what they do after their exit, I think this happens to founders. It happens to entrepreneurs. It happens to professionals that retire. I've coached many of them. And I'm just sharing this with you for you to consider, because you might be a young founder out there just starting on your journey and you're going to be successful. Maybe you're going to build a unicorn company and exit, or just sell a startup to begin with. You're going to give it a go, and maybe you just need to have my words playing in the back of your brain for a future date that's going to save you a lot of heartache, because that's what I want all of you to experience here in this channel. I say I use these videos to try and help you avoid some of the catastrophic mistakes that I've made. And it's not just about fundraising or running your startup, it's also about the overall holistic health of being a founder. And that's why I do these Founder Fridays. These may not be my most popular videos that I put out there, but I hope that you get to know me and we begin to trust each other so you continue to share your journey with me. And maybe, just maybe, the next generation of founders after me are going to be better and better. It's how I think about my kids. My sons are teenagers, and my goal in life is to have them better fathers, better husbands, better professionals than I ever could have been. And that's how I feel about other founders when I meet them, especially if you're young and you're starting. If you come in with realistic expectations, you're willing to work hard, you're coachable, you got that soft heart and you got that thick skin, well, everybody has a better than 0% chance of being that unicorn founder. And I love to see those success stories. The other day, a founder contacted me and said, I just finished raising my $2.6 million seed round, showed me the list of investors, and said, thank you very much for your help in the early stages. And I say this all the time here. My philosophy is to give you so much value for free that's better than anything else you'd go pay for, that later on, when you're sitting there and you're totally successful, you think of me, you feel guilty, and you want to write me a check. Let me know what you think. Maybe you're struggling with the same things, or maybe you haven't really thought about it yet, and this is something new to consider on your founder journey. Watch the other videos I put on the screen for Founder Fridays. Thanks for hanging out with me in this one. Once again, I'll see you in the next one.